All right, gentlemen, welcome to my garage. And today we are, in my garage having a Rolling Rock. This is Rolling Rock number three with some Johnny Walker Black thrown in the mist. Today I went to an estate sale and I bought spent $20, got some stuff, and we're going to talk about old rusty tools because that's what I do on a Friday night. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the smallest vice I've ever deceived. Okay, and let's be honest here. Do I need this vice? Um, no. I mean, maybe one day I'll say, "Oh, I'm glad I got this vice" or whatever. But okay, tiny vice. Let's be honest here. But hey, perhaps it's a good. I'm gonna get a two by four to elevate my phone on maybe while we're here. Um, and oh, there we go. We got the vice. We're gonna bore you to death. We're gonna go on social media. We're gonna. Hold on. I'm just gonna go on Twitter and talk about. Anyway, um, so great. I put that up on social media. So yeah, I don't see any marking on this. I'm gonna guess it's American made because this is basically SAE or Imperial, um, ANSI threads for all the screw patterns. Okay, so let's talk about this. So I'm gonna call this a hobby vice, and the reason I call it a hobby vice is, well, basically, things that are called hobby vices tend to be ones that you mount or easily removable or meant to be portable. So normally a vice, if you have like a really big vice, instead of having a this kind of clamp that you clamp it to the wood. So let's go kind of demonstrate how you would clamp the wood over here. Um, so there we go. So here's my workbench I built. Whatever, not the greatest workbench in the world, but yeah, I basically uh, it's meant to be taken on, taken off, as opposed to a normally you'd have a vise and you'd run some bolts through it and you'd bolt it to your workbench over here. But anyway, and the other thing about vices, specifically this screw over here, this this lead screw over here, when you open this up, tends not to be a normal. Okay, so when you buy screws at the hardware store, there's normally three types of screws you can buy: wood screws, sheet metal screws, and machine screws or machine bolts. And bigger wood screws are called lag bolts. Basically, the difference, sheet metal and wood screws are for, like, it's what you normally attach like to wood, or when you want to screw like some plastic, or plastic, or screwing some, sheet metal into wood or plastic or whatever. And those basically have really thick uh, threads, and they have the pointed tip on the side, and basically you're supposed to drill a pilot hole, but you could even they cut their own threads, right? Uh, machine screws are what you use like a nut for, right? Anyway, but normally with a vise or clamp, this screw over here, this threaded screw over here, is normally either a trapezoidal pattern called an Acme pattern, or a square thread. It's not a pattern you can normally find like in a hardware store. And this is actually 1/4 inch UNF. Okay, fine thread. So 1/4 inch, 28 thread per inch, which is different from a normal. So normally, if you buy a 1/4 inch thick screw, so with imperial screws, FAE screws, there tend to be two sides. Normally, if you sit there and you go to the hardware store and you buy like a 1/4 inch bolt, it will be a 1/4 inch with 20 threads per inch. It'll be coarse, like this thing over here, like this one you use for clamping. and that's called UNC is the technical term for that, Uniform National Course or whatever. It's course thread, right? But this is a slightly stronger thread, and this is 28 thread per inch. This is UNF, okay? Uh, Also, any kind of weird format that are older for whatever reasons would be called UNS, Unified National or United National Special. So the quarter-inch format for there's a quarter-inch screws that have 40 threads per inch, which is like ridiculous, but they're for historical reasons for certain model trains, what have you. But anyway, the point is, yeah, when you go to a hardware store, most of the screws you're going to buy that are quarter-inch outer diameter are 20 thread UNC. This one happens to be a slightly stronger thread, a fine thread, quarter-inch by 20 UNF. And that I find really odd for a vise because basically because it's more threads per inch, it's more turns of this to move it. But I guess it's a small vise, and whatever. And the one advantage of fine thread is actually so there's two advantages. One is you need a thinner nut to secure it, to have enough threads to have enough threads to secure it. I think 6 threads is about the standard of what you need to fully secure it, and 3 threads for you need at least 3 threads to like get a decent hold, but to get maximum hold you need 6 threads. Or I could be completely wrong about that. I think regular nuts are usually 6 threads long, and jam nuts are 3 threads long. But anyway, in order to move this, you have to turn it more to more than a normal screw to to move it, either to widen or shorten the jaw length. But the holding is stronger because it's 20 threads per inch as opposed to 20 threads per inch. And yeah, all machine bolts, whether they be metric or imperial, they're basically not isosceles, equilateral triangles. So they're 60. These teeth have a 60-degree angle. So just a normal equilateral triangle, equal size. Each side are equal side. Each angle is equal size, 60, 60, 60, adding up to 180, and the length of these are equilateral. A normal vise, which I'll show you another one later that I got, but I'll show you just with this clamp. Normally the lead screw is trapezoidal, which you probably can't see here. If I can focus this. Focus for a second, but it didn't focus. Okay, that was silly. Wait. It doesn't want to focus. But these are trapezoidal. I believe the angle is 23 degrees on these. But yeah, these trapezoidal, normally with a clamp or a vise, these trapezoidal threads are a better pattern. So with a square thread pattern where thread and these have a flat surface and a 23-degree angle on each side, as opposed to a pure triangle like a machine screw thread has. But anyway, the cool thing about that is those trapezoidal threads, they're just expensive to find. If I ever have to like replace this lead screw on a vise, it's just a pain to find. They're expensive, they're painful, whatever. I've yet to find a place where I can even just buy 100 of the bolts. Buy 100 of bolts and get them at whatever, $1 a piece or whatever, right? So that's cool. The other thing, so this had normally a vise, normally there's some kind of clip over here to keep this from sliding, the lead screw from sliding out the front. This one had a spring to spread out these, and unfortunately I lost the spring taking this apart. Basically because of that, like when I have this, okay, I'm going to secure this over here. Come on. I know this is exciting watching me off camera put together a vise I took apart. So even though like I have the solid, right? So this slides in and out. So there used to be a spring over here holding this forward or whatever, right? But you know, it's kind of I mean, that just makes things convenient or whatever. Um, what I think I will do tomorrow is I only have one quarter inch fine thread in my Empire Dirt, my polished grid. I only have one nut. But if I have, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use two jam nuts over here. Either I'm going to go to the hardware store and buy a spring. Um, because I discovered in Clark, New Jersey, the Ace Hardware in Clark, New Jersey, sells Hillman springs, a whole variety of springs. And if I can't find this, you know, where the spring fell on the floor when I took it apart or whatever, I'll just go and buy a spring, or I will buy two fine thread jam nuts and basically hold them over here. So we, you know, this will have, you know, very little leeway, but it'll still turn and what have you over here to hold this together. As you can see, I don't know if you can see this well because of the light. When I first bought this, it was really brownish, just covered in rust, but it's obviously green paint over here. I want to clean up the rust over here. And there are two ways to clean up rust, or there are several ways to clean up rust. There's electrolysis, in which you soak it in a base and you run electricity through it, and you basically do the opposite of electroplating, where you remove the rust off of it. The other is you soak it in acid. You soak it in acid, and then you don't need electricity, but then you end up with acid etching on this. Or there's chemicals. You can buy a chemical called Rust-Oleum, which I bought at Harbor Freight. Oh, I'm sorry, not Rust-Oleum, Evapo-Rust, which I bought at Harbor Freight. But you know, they sell this everywhere. This is not like a Harbor Freight exclusive. And I'll try to link to one of the reviews of it. Eric the Car Guy reviewed it, also a guy from New Zealand that reviewed it, and he went into different rust methods, and I will definitely tend to link towards him because he gets into the chemical processes. Unlike, so soaking in acid, you end up acid etching the whole metal. It will slowly eat the metal, which is, you know, not a big deal, except it ends up with a very non-shiny, you know, very, very etched surface, which is good if you want to paint the metal. So we'll be using that for another piece we'll be talking about tonight. This is the Evapo-Rust. They're the catalyst in here that will, and if you remember from basic high school chemistry, a catalyst is something that causes a chemical reaction to happen but doesn't actually get changed. But it will take the brown ferrous ferrox, the rust. So rust is called the Latin's for the periodic table letters initials for rust is Fe, because the Latin for that is ferrite, or ferrite, I believe. So we say when a metal is contains iron or is magnetic, we say it's a ferrous metal. But anyway, this will turn that ferrous oxide into that brown ferrous into a blacker ferrous oxide, which will not stick to the metal, but it won't damage any of the non-rust. It will only react to the rust on the metal here. Anyway, we're going to take some of this Evapo-Rust, and you can get that in various different sizes. You can get that in, you can even buy it by the barrel. But we have a quart container over here, and we're gonna put some material in this, and we're gonna take apart the vise and stick it in there because some people like to restore things. Oh, so first of all, I have no idea. This is by the way, that's normally, so brand new virgin Evapo-Rust is clear, but as you use it, and you can keep reusing it for a while. In theory forever, although I guess not actually forever. So I'll put that in there. I don't know how long this takes. This is the first time I've actually taken it out of the container. I actually have a Morgan vise, which is now on Morgan Chicago, which we have Morgan Milwaukee. Anyway, which I stuck like the handle in that container. But anyway, There we go. We've got that vise taken apart. We've got it in the evaporust. I will shine up the metal parts. And I will repaint the body and the static and dynamic jaw of the vise. So on a vise, the technical terms for the body is called, or the jaw attached to the main body is called the static jaw, and the one that moves is called the dynamic jaw. Anyway, um, it's a tiny little vise. Let's be honest. I bought it for vanity. Okay. That vices are one of the things I tend to hoard for the sake of hoarding. Um, Over there, but I will probably paint that, and I will paint it a fire engine red. Why will I paint a fire engine red? Because see this Rust-Oleum Professional High Performance Enamel. So this is slightly better than regular Rust-Oleum, and I got it basically on a discount because it was an open can at Home Depot. So I will maybe I'll use that, or maybe I'll use, they have the Rust-Oleum 2X, which is the primer plus paint, which won't be as strong, but I don't know. I'll paint it basically whatever color I have just to shine it up. I can't identify a brand. I don't know if it's made in America or not. Probably made in America because it's quarter-inch stock. Quarter is SAE. But regardless of where it is, when I buy these old rusty tools at a store, I buy them to use them. I don't sit there and try to make museum pieces. I won't get a lot of use out of that particular one, but I use tools. I don't sit there and say, this is it's got to be perfect. I may go through a lot of trouble restoring it, but in the end, I don't sit there and say, oh, it's got to be perfectly restored to what it was and blah 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 or whatever. It's like, no, if I can buy a better spray paint can than what, if someone comes out with a better, Rust-Oleum comes out with a better paint than like powder coating or whatever that I can buy for like a $5 can, then yeah, if I buy a rusty old tool and I spray paint it and it'll last forever and it'll just work and it'll automatically, it'll coat thinly no matter how bad a job I do with spraying it out, yeah, I'm just gonna buy that. I don't, I use tools, that's what I do. But anyway, on to the next tool. This is a tap wrench. And what is a tap wrench? So, okay. So what is a tap wrench? A tap wrench is a wrench for moving taps. So that's a tap. What is a tap for? Okay, so normally, so I said there are normally three types of bolts or screws you buy in a hardware store: sheet metal, wood, or machine screws. Now, sheet metal and wood screws are both, what you would drill into wood or drill into, to attach like sheet metal or plastic to wood. Okay, and those are what we call self-tapping, in that you get the screw, it has the point, it has the threads cut in, so you have to sometimes they're self-drilling, sometimes you can self-drill just by forcing them, but you should use a pilot hole, but sometimes they have flutes for to allow you to self-drill them. Basically, they will cut the threads for them. You don't need to pre-cut the threads. What if you have a piece of metal and you want to make a hole that you can put a regular machine bolt in, like the same threaded just like a nut? How do you do that? You use a tap. You use the tap and die kit. Taps are for drilling, cutting interior threads and holes, and dies are for cutting exterior threads in rods. But anyway, you can actually get tap and die sets, the DeWalt ones at Home Depot. But actually, I would, if I was going to buy them from a big box store, even though I own the DeWalt kit, I would tend towards Lowe's on this one, because the Irvin Hampton set is actually the superior set to get. But if I was local to me, I would go to an Ace Hardware store. I would go to the Ace Hardware store in Clark, New Jersey, which I'm going to list in the comments, that has the Irwin Hardware, and they have a really good selection of stuff. And for each tap, you have to get a specific size drill, which is sized to the interior, not the exterior diameter, which is normally, so quarter-inch bolt is quarter-inch on the outside or whatever. And those are usually letter drill bits. They're not, you just, I mean, you probably could get away with in most cases. You know, you get like the Ryobi makes drill bits that are sized to every 64th of an inch, and you can get a six, you know, the 64th closest to the letter, but you get the letter drill bits. And actually, the only, if you get the DeWalt tap and die kit, the for each of the taps, or if you just buy DeWalt individual taps, each individual tap will have the appropriate drill bit for drilling the interior thing, and then you have to get you know, you can go and you can look elsewhere on YouTube, or I think I might have a using a die video, but there are plenty of tap and die videos on YouTube. You can look at what's his name, Mr. Pete Tubal Khan. Yeah, Mr. Pete. But anyway, normally what you do is you drill the hole, and then you put some either some cutting fluid, or you know, any other type of lubricant, hopefully, and you would normally turn a 1/4 inch. You turn like half an inch, 1/4 inch back to cut the threads, half and half, half, 1/4 inch back, and then half, 1/4 inch back, because you have to cut the threads. You can't just power through. Some people, you know, and if you're cutting, you can actually cut machine bolt threads into wood, you know, which I you know, wouldn't necessarily recommend, because it's just kind of a pain in the butt and it's of dubious value. But you can use crazy glue to reinforce those threads, or plastic. And if you're like cutting into like a soft plastic, then yeah, throw this. Then if you really want to, throw this into like a drill, or a impact driver, and you know, just you know, feather the trigger, and put it in. But anyway, tap and die, they're kind of a pain in the butt here. So these, I could probably check. So they are the diameter of this is they're not 1/4 inch screws, and they're not 5/16 screws. They're probably metric. They're probably like M5 or M6s. I don't care to check. But usually, yeah, I tend to get my most of my tap and die kits are I have some tap and die, some tap wrenches and die kits or whatever. They're relatively old, so I tend to like replace like the screws or whatever on them, because they're rusty or whatever. This I did have to use my pliers to get them. They're kind of a little tight or whatever, but whatever. Maybe I'm gonna take this apart. I'm gonna stick this in the evaporust over here. I would probably lubricate these threads with something called anti-seize. So anti-seize serves two purposes. One, to lubricate. Anti-seize is for lubricating threads to prevent them from sticking. It prevents. So in stainless steel, one problem with stainless steel is cold, and titanium and other metal, or any metal in theory, is galling or cold welding. Basically, when two of the same metals get too close or whatever, and they push out, you know, the oxygen. You know, the molecules from two sides of the same can kind of forget they weren't attached. So I just threw these in the Rust-Oleum. I'll throw this in the Rust-Oleum. I don't see any. I do see some markings. I've had several drinks, so another thing that. But anyway, this got darker. If you rewind, you can probably tell this seems to have gotten darker. So I've got that in there. That's the Rust-Oleum in there. So we'll let that sit for a bit. In the morning, we'll get that out. But the good thing about that, you can leave it in too long and it doesn't get damaged. Next thing I got, tiny little pipe wrench. And just, I did not mean to show me. Not that I'm embarrassed about showing me, but hey, this is me. There's that yellow drill is the DeWalt drill my dad got for me one Christmas. Thank you, Dad. Love you, Dad. So this is what is this? A Roxby, patent applied for. I don't know if they got the patent. Roxby Wrench Company, Boston, Massachusetts. Number 10 pipe wrench. Okay. So as far as I can tell, if I open the jaws all the way over to here, the opening is less than 2 inches, but it could probably like handle a 2 inch pipe. So I guess anyway, if you are a professional plumber, or I mean just the wrench you want, okay, if you had to have one pipe wrench, you want an 18-inch wrench owned by Rigid, an orange Rigid wrench. This one's blue, blue like the cobalt blue. Um, and why is it blue? Because, well, basically, I painted it blue, and it's got some black detailing over here. So this is blue Rust-Oleum. This is just a black. I don't know if that was a Rust-Oleum or if this might be a latex enamel. Just to give it some details or whatever. Anyway, it was an old wrench. I paid $5 for this at an estate sale, not the estate sale this Friday. This a couple of years ago. I cleaned it out, brushed it out, and then I put it through several 2-3 coats of blue paint, and then I did the edges with some black paint, which I just did by hand. I put this over here. So this is a real Rigid wrench. Once again, I push the button showing my face. But that's the wrench you want. And okay, yeah, even a Harbor Freight. I mean, if you're just a DIY home gamer, the Harbor Freight, or whatever, just, the cheapest 18-inch wrench, will work okay. The issue is, it's the cheaper cast iron. This you can beat on more. You can put a cheater bar on. But that's, if you had to get one size wrench, that's the size wrench to get. If you're a plumber, you have all sizes. You have, they have offset version of the wrench or whatever. This is a number 10. I was just thinking, maybe, one of my things I was thinking about, it'd be nice to have a smaller pipe wrench. And so pipe wrenches have teeth for grabbing round pipe. They're not, the edges are not square. They're meant for holding things. This could go up, I could probably, in a pinch, bite onto a 2-inch pipe, but I probably went 3/4 or something like that. But anyway, it's rusty, but it's old. It's made in America. So, what I'm going to do here is take this apart. And so here are my thoughts on this. And once again, I'm not a professional or engineer or whatever. I'm just a guy that reads a bunch of stuff on the internet. So these parts are normally the round nut, which is threaded inside to go against this, and the head are normally left bare metal. And I'm going to soak these in the Evapo-Rust. Well, I'm going to soak the head in the Evapo-Rust now and maybe flip it over. So this, ultimately, I could, and I've got better means of abrasion than this. Okay, it's Friday night and I'm had a little drink and I don't want to get too crazy with this. I've got, this is a brass brush, a Home Depot brass brush. I have another one over here. Fall and embarrass myself. I get a steel brush. I could get whatever. There are many means of moving. There's mechanical means. I can get my green 3M pad. I could brush this out. And I could even try, partial, other chemicals. WD-40. WD-40, water displacement formula 40. The 40th try in the great experiment succeeded, according to legend or what have you. And the WD-40 company would, of course, like you to believe that, you can use their main liquid for, anything, except when they're selling you, their specialized version of these liquids. WD-40 is good for spraying things when you just want them not to rust. There's a terrible lubrication. Most of the time, it's too thin of a lubricant and dies out too quickly. In the case of locks or door hardware, it's actually the one time it's usually too thick and too gummy. And you want to use a dry Teflon powder. But two things it's good for is, when you have something that got wet, you want to stop it from rusting, some bare metal or whatever, spray it with WD-40. I'd buy WD-40 so I basically bought a gallon of it. Uh, little containers where I can put in or whatever. Anyway, and I get these yellow Costco microfiber towels. But it does actually. One of the things it does pretty good is loose rust. It'll loosen up rust in here. So that's one thing I can do over here to remove it. But anyway, my theory, and yeah, I'm rubbing it with the microfiber towel off camera. Oh, well, let me just, you don't see me. Okay, there we go. There we go. Rubbing it over here. I know that sounds funny. I know what that sounds like. But anyway, we can brush it out, clean it up. So that's one way we can like kind of get some of the surface rust off. It's kind of dirty. To get some of that off. But yeah, ultimately, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some acid. And okay, so generally speaking, acids for removing rust. Okay, so there's muric acid you can buy at the hardware store, which is like kind of a heavy duty stuff, which you have to be careful not to leave in too long, because it'll really etch the stuff. You can buy citric acid, which is normally powdered. Mix that with water. You can also soak it in regular white vinegar. So I just, which what I'm going to do. This is some Heinz vinegar. It's not a gallon. It's actually 5 liters. It's a little bigger than a gallon that I bought at Costco. But just go to the market, buy a gallon of it or whatever. And if you want to make it work a little better, but be a little more caustic, what you can do is you can store it in. You can mix some salt in it. And what that does is that will add some hydrochloric acid. Now I'm going to try to find a New Zealander who made the YouTube video about how to. But anyway, yeah. So this leaves the metal not shiny looking and very. It looks acid etched. Okay, it looks very dark, and it leaves it doesn't leave it very smooth. I mean, it's pretty. It's just not super polished smooth. It's relatively smooth. It's not going to be like feel bumpy. But anyway, the advantage of doing this is I'm going to paint this. And, what do you do when you paint between coats, right? You use sandpaper to rough things up. So the next coat of paint adheres to the old coat of paint, right? Or, why do you use a primer, right? Because primer is extra sticky because, like the bare surface might be too smooth, right? But there we go. So now we're going to pour some of this gallon of vinegar in there. We'll leave that in there. We got a gallon of vinegar. We got some of our vinegar, which we mix with salt. And when you mix vinegar with salt, what happens is some of the acetic acid. So vinegar is very watered down acetic acid, I believe, and the New Zealand video won't get into it. Becomes hydrochloric acid, which will work a little better. Is I believe the understanding of that one. But a lot of the other chemicals, the science behind removing rust with acid. And evaporust. The video, if I can find it, hopefully link in the description. Not comments. I'm gonna link to it in the description because this my YouTube video and I get that in the description. But anyway, we're gonna basically put that in there. But yeah, basically my plan here with this is to let this sit overnight. And then brush it out, and then hopefully it'll just be that gray acid etched metal. Once that is done, that acid etched metal kind of thing has happened. I can paint this. Maybe I'll paint it the blue. Maybe I'll with the blue Rust-Oleum can. Maybe I'll just use. I got a plain black can. Maybe I'll paint it black. Maybe I'll use the Fire Engine red. I have the 2 cans of Fire Engine red, the professional grade enamel, as opposed to the the 2 twice as good, or I mean the extra strong stuff, or I've got 2 girly colors. My wife bought like a greenish. Yeah, I don't want to say okay. I shouldn't say girly, but anyway, whatever. They're colors that might be considered traditionally more feminine. I think it's a teal or a blue. There might even be a pink color. Maybe I'll just do that to do the handle because it's 2X, because the first coat does have primer. and what have you. Oh, by the way, if you ever are going to paint with Rust-Oleum, read the instructions. Read about the recoat time and all that. Do a good job. You can do a decent job with it. I mean, consider if you're going to sit there and say, I don't want to sit there and soak it overnight in acid. There's a rust covering primer, which you can use or whatever. Anyway, well, that now brings to the final item, final item on our estate sale finds. So I paid $20 for everything. Okay, one item, which I'm about to show you, was $15, and everything else I showed you was just $5 basically. Here's the thing about estate sales. Okay, if you're a guy that new homeowner or what apartment dweller or whatever your hobby is, you sit there, you need tools, you want tools or whatever. Um, Estate sale companies are run by retired or older women, women of retirement age, generally. Okay, this is not always the case. This is the vast majority of the case, at least what I've seen in central New Jersey, in Union County, New Jersey. And what they tend to advertise is the furniture, the antique furniture, the whatever that tends to have a high markup. The pots and pans, everything in the kitchen or whatever. Okay, the stuff in the garage, and let's remember the other thing about this. Okay, um, women marry older men, and women outlive men. I mean, statistically. But anyway, the people that run these companies are older, retired women, and they tend to because whatever the invisible labor of women and what have you. I I get the feeling that most of the time the people the heirs to these estates that are there, or the people dealing with the estate sale women are themselves women, the female daughters, the female survivors of the deceased. Um, and as such, they're sitting there and saying, "Oh, look at all these awesome furniture, blah blah blah. This is where they money or whatever." Okay. All the stuff in the garage, uh, in the eyes of the person, the customer, and of everyone involved in the estate sale, it's just let's get rid of it at whatever price we can because it's better to sell it far below what it's worth than to throw it in a dumpster. Okay, and usually if you go to an estate sale, there's the husband or the son or the son-in-law is in the garage and he bought the thing or whatever. And there's stuff, and if you sit there and have like half a clue what any of the weird stuff is or whatever, and like, oh, well, they oh, you're a contractor. I'm like, no, I'm just a homeowner or whatever, and they just, they give the stuff to you. Like, I mean, they give you ridiculous deals. So I got all that for basically $5. And the thing I got for $15 is this Hobby Vice, which is unmarked. Um, and it does have a tragic flaw in that it does not have a so what I said, a portable vise. It does not have the lead screw here. This lead screw, so this is, I'm pretty sure, the trapezoidal screw, like clamp, which is going to be a pain to replace. The best way to replace trapezoidal screws is to go to like Harbor Freight or buy a cheap clamp with the trapezoidal screw you want, and just sacrifice the clamp, basically. But it does have two screw holes up top, so I can permanently mount this somewhere. This is a nice beefy one. And let me open this like to its maximum. This is my second. This will be my second, like, I mean, other than the super tiny one, palm size one, which is, I bought it at or whatever, right? But let's look at this. Okay, so I got this open like as big as I'd want this open. And this is almost, this reminds me of my Morgan Vice, which I should finish restoring. But we're gonna use measure the distance here with calipers, because whatever. 5.5 centimeters. So we're gonna say, okay, it's about 2.25 inches. And so 2¼ inches jaw width, and I can get a little more open if I want to. I mean, that's just like, really like having a solid, uh, it looks like. Three. So 2½ inch wide jaws. Um, little, not too beat up. So there's one like gorged over here. There's a decent size anvil. Let's look at the anvil. Let's look at the anvil. And I'm obviously a little over an inch and an eighth. And so the flat part of the anvil over here. So this actually does have an anvil you can beat on. Is an inch and an eighth, and then there's the small horn on it. So this is another thing is like my other hobby vise is a Sears made in Taiwan hobby vise, and it's a good vise, I mean for what it is, and it's got basically one lead screw and just 2 bars above and below it to give it stability. It's got a nice big, U, like, C clamp, C bar of metal, of cast, steel or cast iron or whatever above it or whatever. There's no markings on this whatsoever. I have no idea what this is, what brand it is. I'm not going to bore you to death to figure out if this is American or, Asian in origin. But yeah, I mean, it's better than the Taiwanese Sears one I have. And I've got a big Morgan American vise and a big Taiwanese vise, that's like, with pipe jaws and stuff. It is, I can do, whatever if I care about that. But anyway, but yeah, the other thing besides that C clamp over here. So it's got the C clamp over here, and there's a pin over here that I can probably punch out if I want to take this lead screw. And this lead screw seems to be not a trapezoidal, but a square screw pattern, which is the other pattern. I don't know if square trapezoidals are better for binding, whatever. That's probably arguable. Just like, which of the many forms of, anchoring products are best for drywall, and which of the, lock washers are best, or what have you. And, it all depends on, how you conduct the test. I'm sure. Anyway, I'm going to dip that in the acid, most of that in the vinegar, the hydrochloric vinegar. But the other thing about it that reminded me of this is this is like the I guess the nut for the lead screw, and this is sort of loose over here, and there's a pin over here where I can push this out if I really wanted to. So over here is the pin holding in place, and I can push it out or drill it out or what have you. This is kind of really dirty. Before I stick it in the vinegar, I'm going to go over here and there's some paint here too, and I have various means of paint stripper. I have various means of removing the paint. But yeah, I want to make this a quick and easy job, because it's a good vise. What I probably will do is I'll sit there, I'll let it soak. I'll fill this up with water, let it soak, maybe flip it over, blah blah blah. It will be nice and etched. The other thing is when you soak stuff in acid, you want to neutralize. So you want to rinse it out, and you want to like maybe you don't want to get it rusty. You want to dry it quick. So usually a good method to do that is so if you want to be the most cost-effective method to do it is to get some water and baking soda, soak in the water and baking soda, then rinse out with plain water, then coat it in like some WD-40 that you bought by the gallon, which is much cheaper to buy $20 by the gallon. Use a little spray than to use an aerosol, blah blah blah. That's the quick way. But if you're lazy and it's almost as cheap, and probably the best way to do this is you soak this, and actually maybe I'll show the Kuhn trucking video where he kind of tries to restore an old wrench. It's a wrench sort of like the pipe wrench, but it's actually more of an English style adjustable wrench because it's square and has flat jaws, but I digress. Anyway, The point being, yeah, you sit there, you soak this in, you don't have to do this with the evaporust, but if you're doing this with the evaporust, you just maybe soak it in like oil or whatever, unless you're gonna, directly go back to painting it or whatever, because you don't want to do this if you're gonna paint this. Uh, but what you should do is, with this, like, yeah, either a bath of like baking soda or some other, basic thing, or just spray it with some Windex, which is relatively cheap. And, since you have Windex probably in a sprayer, you spray it down with the Windex, that'll neutralize it, then you rinse it off with some water, then you dry it off real good. Once you get dried off real good, maybe hopefully it's a hot day, you can just leave it out in the sun, it'll dry up, and then you throw it down some cardboard, you get your spray paint, you carefully paint it up. And it's nice, and the acid etching has made it a nice quick surface where, whatever. Maybe you use primer, maybe you don't, whatever. But anyway, this is cool, in my opinion. This is what I do. Anyway, thanks for watching. Actually, so actually, before I sign off, we're gonna sit there, we're gonna take that, we're gonna take our acid, see, how we say, see, rust removal vinegar. And why did I label it rust removal vinegar? Well, actually, my wife tends to make concoctions with the vinegar for cleaning, more of a citric. She'll put some, sometimes she'll mix vodka in there, some alcohol, some cheap, some cheap alcohol. And most of the time she will put orange peels in there and make it smell better. She's very into things smelling good. She's one of those people that has to smell her food before she eats it. But anyway, yeah, the point of all that is what? What's the point of all that? The point of all that is, anyway, yeah, she used that for cleaning, and that this vinegar, when I pour it back in, will go back in near the cleaning stuff. So I just want to make sure that doesn't get used for, and also we have maid service, come in every other week, and what have you. So hopefully they will see that and not use that to, well, I mean they don't use they use Windex or whatever, they use whatever they use, when you're paying for a cleaning service, I defer to their expertise, just like I like to have as my profession as a software developer. I like my expertise to defer to by those paying my salary. I mean, obviously I take into account their budgetary concerns, et cetera, et cetera. I'm looking here. So, this is interesting. Well, this has turned yellow. I soaked this in the evaporust and it quickly turned yellow. I don't know if that's normal or not. I don't know if like the paint's just stripping off because it got rusty below that. That's interesting. Like I said, this was like definitely like a green paint. I don't know if the evaporust, just soaked in below the paint, or so much of the paint was rusted off. That's kind of interesting. I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna let that soak a little more. Tomorrow, I'll touch it tomorrow. Anyway, that is traditional. So, yeah, I don't know. And like I said, like those screws were a little greasy. Who knows what was on there? There's definitely some WD-40 on there. But anyway, thanks for watching. It's been 49 minutes and 33 seconds of me talking about old rusty tools. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And if you didn't, well, why were you watching? But anyway, have a great night. I'm going to go finish my beer, go to sleep. I'm going to wait for the dishwasher to finish. Maybe I will download Ubuntu onto a smart disk, onto a Ubuntu PowerPC, or I need to fix my wife's old Mac. Whatever. That is regardless of this. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. This is Justin Deering.